I'm already gone. Just let me lay out in your sunlight. I love the way it makes me come alive.
Alright, hello. So, this is our first ever podcast. We've got our special guest with us, Ben. I'm also joined by Cartel, and our editor today is Joshua. So, we'll start things off. What are your views, Ben, on the recent amount of gun crime and police officers just shooting when they get the scene to kill instead of attempting to negotiate and resolve things peacefully?
Well, I think it really it impacts activity and definitely the first impressions of a new player for the game. It does seem to be an issue which doesn't really appear to be tackled by police command. It should be something so simple, which is ensuring there's good leadership and working down from there. But I don't think people are seeing that, and it should be down to the police to make improvements, and we're not seeing that. There should be more time spent, in my opinion, of course, negotiating with people. We have to remember that real negotiation situations can last hours, and while I'm not proposing that they spend hours in a Roblox game, because that would be not fun, but at least police should take a lot more time to think about what their actions will be, and let's add a bit more realism. Instead of gold command rocking up, we can have a bronze command member. They can lead it if they feel necessary. They can get silver command. But yeah, you raised some brilliant questions, I guess, and it's definitely things that if group leadership are listening to, they should absolutely try to take on, consider what people are saying here, because yeah. I think
I do. I totally agree with you in terms of gold command rocking up. There's obviously bronze and silver command for a reason. They can deal with it. There was a recent situation with a hostage taken on a bus where there was a bit of negotiating going on there. There was a bomb threat and there was hostages getting stabbed, and there was a bit of confusion on what was happening because there wasn't really a set person controlling the scene. Then obviously it was dealt with when he got off the bus. Do you think there was a way that could have been dealt with better on the police's end?
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, we should have more armed officers active. I think it's as simple as that. You don't have a situation like that with 2 armed officers. It's as simple as that. We should at least have 5 active officers on at any one time, really, because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be right for people to, it shouldn't be right for the admins to go, listen, you can't buy a gun because we haven't got officers online. That shouldn't be something that we have to deal with right now. We should be able to go, yeah, sure, do what you want, right? And we shouldn't have to send the whole force of the whole of the activity to one set location. I think that's just completely wrong. And while I'm not questioning the judgment of any of the commanders, or gold command or police leadership in this instance, I think it should be something looked on to really expand on the divisions, because while local policing of course has to be the backbone, at the same time we shouldn't have to have issues with activity when it comes to the specialist units which we'll need, especially if we have accessibility for civilians to buy firearms.
Yeah, that's good points from you there. Activity has been a problem. Armed was without a superintendent for some time, and it was just 2 constables. Now there's been a new superintendent appointed. Maybe sometime we can get his view on things and what he plans to do. And we've already got 1 new officer and armed. There was another one. There was actually a bit of concern about that because he was a probationary police constable. He was going through his probationary period where a lot of people weren't able to join divisions, but he was allowed in and he was trained. So what do you think around that? Do you think that's something that should be allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no issue at all. I do happen to know the police constable who you're referring to, and I do know that he is a generally good officer, and I'm not suggesting in any shape or form that we should be making exceptions for certain people. I think it should just be standard that probationary police constables can apply to set divisions before they finish probationary period. Once that's happened, of course, then it should be accessible for them to join a division, because a lot of people join the police for a division, and to hold them back, it just feels wrong.
Sometimes a week in Roblox games can feel like quite a long time. So even just opening that possibility up to them. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You were talking about getting more armed officers in and around the scenes. Activity from Police Scotland on a whole has, in my eyes, been seeing a decline. Do you see any way that could possibly be brought back up in terms of activity?
Yeah, I do. I feel like we have generally, the police appears to me top heavy. We shouldn't have so many superintendents. Superintendents really are the backbone of the command in Police Scotland, which is absolutely not right. In my opinion, to tighten communication, we should have the divisional leads brought down to a position of chief inspector or inspector to get those vital bronze command positions filled. That'll also make it a bit more realistic when an inspector turns up on scene, or 3 inspectors turn up on scene, instead of 3 superintendents, when it really doesn't appear that there's any need. It's a really difficult one, I appreciate, for the command team to get sorted, but it feels like promotions are either happening too slowly for some or too quickly for others. I know we did have a situation with the past superintendent for armed who jumped they were promoted to inspector, and a couple of days later they jumped from inspector to superintendent, and it didn't feel right for me, especially because their main focus when they were the lower positions was roads policing. So on that note, what police should be doing is moving, not necessarily seen as a demotion, but a temporary movement for the command to make the divisions a tighter in terms of communication, and so it will appear obviously more realistic, and also, in my opinion, can be a lot more functional.
I totally agree with you. You were talking about jumping there. Now, there's obviously 2 assistant chief constables. One of them went from police constable to assistant chief constable. At the start, I think a lot of people were very shocked that it happened, especially when the police command team's always no free rank, you work for your rank, and he goes up. He's shown he's good. He's able to be it. He recently left and joined back and went straight to assistant chief constable. What do you think about that? Should that have happened, or?
In my opinion, it's a really difficult one, because again, I do consider myself to be good friends with the assistant chief constable who was promoted. Personally, I don't think
me too.
But at the same time, he has proved that he can do a good job, and I think the longer he spends, he has actually done quite a lot for the police. So I think it's a difficult situation I have to handle, and I don't think I'd probably be able to give you an unbiased view on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has shown he's competent. He has been proactive in trying to fill the slot of superintendent of armed, which was open for quite a long time, and he's been doing documents. So I think he's good enough to be in the role, but I also think the speed he went up at has affected the kind of chain of command with people moving up. They're my views. So, do you have any things you would like to bring up that you have seen happening that you would like to be discussed?
I think there's a lack of development for the police. In fact, I could probably make this point about the whole of Scotland, unfortunately. I think if I was the owner, I would definitely consider doing things like hiring more development staff, instead of just having himself, and I believe there's another developer, but I think that's the extent of it. There should be much more development on the game, and for a group which has 200, I think maybe 300 members now, I'm unable to recall, I think there should be much more done about it. It's too slow, I'm afraid, and the stuff should be done, and while I'm not saying I could do what he does in terms of leading a group...
Nearly 400 members.
Oh, wow, well, there you go. But
Yeah.
I think that if you do hold a position in a group like that, I feel like you need to be prepared to have to make constant updates and dedicate a lot of time. And I think the administration staff and moderation staff and community management, which we don't have unfortunately, should definitely be really considered. I think as soon as you have administration sorted out, then the services should follow. If just my final point in terms of services, there's not fair development, unfortunately. I think I do hold a position in the ambulance service, and I have made a few things for the service which I have sent to the owner, and hasn't actually been added. The file's there. It would honestly be a 30-second job, and while I'm not going to use this platform to encourage any development for my personal gain, I think we really should be looking at look at accelerating the development in some services. I know the fire service have just had some new stuff, but it's not a considerable amount when we think about it. It's new fire engines. I mean, it's definitely vital. It was definitely necessary, but we should also be looking at maybe new leadership and new training documents. There's so much I could go on for, but yeah, I think we should see a more active development.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. There's another thing too, this in terms of like the private companies, and there's a lot of buildings around it could be used, but they're not in terms of that, and I've not seen applications open to create a private company for a very long time. Do you know what I'm on about? Like Ippy's Chippies and Saddle, the pub. I just think that would add more roleplay aspect to it.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so much lost opportunity, in my opinion. I mean, the successful groups, they don't just operate on police, fire service, ambulance. I mean, to be fair, we're barely operating on that.
Yeah,
you do see a lot of private sector, activity, and it's not something which has actually been looked on. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people would, if given the opportunity, would love to take up a position where they can own their own private company or work from a private company. I mean, it's not like we're short on options. I mean, although yes, Duns is a small village, it doesn't mean to say that it's just police and the ambulance and the fire service. In fact, there's much more to that, in my opinion. It's what should be focused on is, say, well, we're going to be adding these new buildings. There's going to be a Discord server already up. You just need to make the handbooks, get the staff ready, etc. And then people should be able to apply to own the businesses, and it should be down to the moderation teams, administration teams, and maybe some of the service commanders. If the service applied to them, so for example, Crime Stoppers, if that was open, then the police would have a foot in it. So yeah, there should be much more private sector development. I think that would really benefit the group greatly.
You make some very, very good points. What would you make if you had the opportunity?
Well, I'm not really too sure. I think I have been past critical of the map itself being done, but because it feels like quite a lack of opportunities in it. But no, I personally would definitely like to open something like perhaps a shop, like a news agent, something which would really benefit people, or at least add a bit more realism. Maybe a travel agent, something where people can actually go in and at least have a bit of motivation to try and roleplay, because currently our roleplay standards aren't the best, and I think what really we should be focusing on doing is actually engaging with the community instead of what usually happens, which is taking the side of the police, which is absolutely unfair.
Yeah, true. I was just looking through the Scotland Discord, and in the Burns development section, there's an advertisement for phones that was put out on the 3rd of January. That was a long time ago. Do you have any idea when we're going to be seeing it implemented to the game, or?
Well, I'm not too sure how much of this is classified and how much I can reveal, but I do believe being made aware of what has been happening is you can go into a shop and you can upgrade the GUI on your phone. So you start off with a phone like a BlackBerry, and that being your GUI, and then you can gain money and upgrade that to obviously maybe having your GUI as an iPhone 12, for example. I think that's a really clever idea. It's definitely something unique. But I think
a very good idea.
also begs the question: will people use it? It feels like we're having a lot of developments, or a lot of development time being spent on us, and that development not necessarily being asked for by the public, or at least these extensions to already existing things which aren't actually being asked for by the player base. In my opinion, I think really the players should be much more listened to, because every good community strives on making it so the community are able to engage. It doesn't feel like we do that. It's sad, but I feel like that's the case we're in right now with Scotland.
There was kind of like a call to war almost to bring Inverness back. I wasn't around in the community when Inverness was around. I only recently joined and have played on Duns the whole time. From what I've heard, Inverness was amazing. But what are the main key points to you that made Inverness separate to Duns in terms of engagement?
Well, it was a completely different time. It is no question about it. Inverness was a smaller and less detailed map than Duns, but I think only marginally in terms of detail. I think the case with Inverness is that people like the community. It felt different back then. It feels like what's happened with Duns is everyone sort of tried to toughen up, try and increase the old staff have been removed and the newer staff have been implemented, which I don't think there's an issue with, until we realise that the newer staff definitely have a different take on their type of role players. Now, the role players in Inverness weren't necessarily realistic, but the difference between the role players within, or a similar role player within Duns as well, in Inverness it would be just let go if it was FRP. I think in Duns it would really be quite strictly dealt with, and I'm not necessarily saying that's a good or bad thing, but it did feel like a more fun community back then, and that's why people liked Inverness, because they were able to tie Inverness with a time which was really fun in the community. And I think because of Inverness, people have actually stayed. I think if the group started off with Duns, which it did originally do, but the Duns we see today, if it did start off with Duns, would we still have that player base here? I really doubt we would. It feels like if Inverness was much more opportunity. There was steady development, there was a steady administration, not to take anything away from the current administration teams, but the Inverness was definitely a group where we had active services. It was a game where we had active services, which is something we haven't seen, because it does feel like the police get all the attention. And now, well, yes, undoubtedly the police is the most interesting or most popular public service you can get in a roleplay group. There are still people who want to work in other sectors, but there's no appeal for them, because it again circles back to my point that there's a lack of development. Well, in Inverness we saw good development. That meant good activity. Good activity meant more service activity, which of course it's like the circle of life, isn't it? It keeps going and going and going.
That's true.
With Duns, it feels like all of that has just been let slip.
I mean, I like the game Duns. It's fun. There are plenty of places to do role plays in. But I do think bringing public sectors in, or private sectors, sorry, would give more, like maybe no whip and saddle, even just fights with people getting drunk, or I don't know, anything. It could bring more aspect and even more things for the public sectors to do, ambulance and fire, dealing with that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think bar fights would definitely not only benefit the citizens, but also the police. I know that there isn't really a lot of appeal for people to stay in local. I mean, I'm currently, as we speak, in the police there, and I can tell you now with confidence that I could not wait to get out of local, and I still dislike having to go on local. I would much rather be a traffic unit, and that's. I do quite like local policing usually, but it's only in communities where we have actual cause for them to go. It feels like a lot of the things that we do in Duns are pursuits of course, and with a pursuit of locally
Or armed,
really take
hostage,
exactly,
anything like that.
exactly, and then we have to sort of think, well, would that really be that realistic for a small town in the middle of or on the Scottish border, I should say. No, it's not right. I'm afraid. I think we should have much more diverse role players, and I don't think there's anything stopping us from that.
Yeah.
I was listening in at the beginning and then near enough the end, and I'd like to say about that PPC, I honestly don't think he should have gotten into armed or even been guaranteed a place in armed, because everyone has had to do their probationary period where they have not been allowed into anything. But that guy just comes back. I don't even know who he was, but that guy is just there, and then he gets into armed without having to wait the 1 week.
But do you not think that could be something which could be changed conditionally? What I mean is the police hasn't really got the best for activity, and armed is definitely a unit that needs to be strong with officers, and I think that particularly probationary police constable would have been rather active, and I think him getting in have been viewed as unfair by other police constables who have obviously done the selected period, of course, but I think at the end of the day it could really have been quite beneficial to have another armed officer, because that means that we have greater numbers, and at the end of the day crime can be tackled with a bit more ease at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are a lot of things, issues that have been brought up with Duns, but there've got to be quite a lot of things that you enjoy about Duns. One of the things I enjoy about Duns is the fact that there always does seem to be something. Now, I think I'm quite lucky that I am an armed officer, that I generally do have something to do when I'm on police, but obviously, as local, there isn't much to do. There is always seeming to be something happening. Do you think you'll ever try and join the armed policing, or not?
It's really a difficult one. It feels like armed policing is definitely somewhere where everyone wants to get in, and so spaces are limited. And I think with me already being being a traffic constable, I think that would probably be quite unfair for someone who might have also wanted the space but not in a division. So I think I'd probably be better off just leaving that division spot for somebody else.
Right, yeah. We've actually been talking quite a lot about the police. I think we should give some insight to others.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said you were.
Sorry, on you go.
You said you were a paramedic or ambulance driver. What type of?
Yeah, I'm a deputy chief executive of the ambulance service.
Oh, nice. So, what type of things do you do there? Like, do you encourage people to join?
Well, absolutely, yeah. There's so much we would do, again, if we focus on the development. I think that there's definitely a lot of benefits that it can bring. A lot of the things that we are doing right now is the normal ambulance operations that you see day to day, or at least what the ambulance service is obviously known for. Now, we have had plans, or we still do have plans to open a critical care division with a helicopter and a critical care response vehicle, which is effectively used when the helicopter's out of action, which is obviously to get a doctor to any major scene, or major trauma scene. We have a few students which obviously do need to be trained up, and will get trained up. But we're just waiting on some of our assets to come through, and then once we have that, we should be brilliant to start operations.
Yeah, sounds good. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say before we finish up?
I'd like to say that armed only have 3 officers, not including the lead. So we could take anyone, I think. So you're saying that would it be fair if you were in 2 of the divisions? I don't think a lot of the people have, or a lot of the non or divisionless people have applied for it. If I was the only one that got in the recent applications.
Yeah. Well, obviously that PPC got in as well, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few more suggestions.
so here we see at the very start there seems to be a police chase. AP05 attempts to pit the vehicle, glitches through and ramps up the hill while we see a vehicle on fire. AP05 most likely should not have drove past that vehicle while it was on fire. What are your views on that situation?
I think it was just heat of the situation. I don't think they were like thinking clearly. I think they were like thinking, we need to get this person off the streets. And I think they had tunnel vision and they weren't looking in their surroundings. That's what I'm thinking.
Alright, and what about you, Ben?
I'm trying to sound respectful. I couldn't really disagree more, unfortunately. I think I don't really see there being
Just
any.
poor driving.
Yeah, I don't think that there is really any excuse for that. I think it's horrific driving, which obviously does need to be looked into. And I'm not
Obviously.
I'm not gonna say that I've never done anything like that, because I have, and I can understand sort of the actions which may have happened, because obviously it's quite difficult to drive those cars when you're going so quickly. But no, it did look fairly purposeful for me, because the lane was completely clear. There was no obstructions that they really needed to get past anywhere, apart from maybe the burning car. But again, that wasn't blocking any lanes, and they could have swapped over into the other lane. I think the driving there definitely needs to be looked into, and yeah, the police definitely need to have a look
Some
at
generally poor driving.
Absolutely, yeah.
Aye. Alright, I think that's all we have time for. So I thank you for coming. Hopefully you'll come again sometime when we've got more issues to discuss. That's all from us. If you want to take part, if you have anything you would like to say on iIssue, feel free to join our Discord, which will be linked below. And come create a ticket, we'll talk to you, see what you have to say. And we're always open. Anybody has any views, it doesn't matter if it's for or against a certain subject, we're happy to hear what you have to say. So thank you, Ben. Come
My
again
pleasure.
soon. Thank you for your views. See you later.